My name's Becky Little. I'll be your host today, and I'm pleased to welcome you to hear how brands are increasing their e-commerce revenue with the help of authentic, trusted expert reviews. With my role in product marketing and customer experience, I get to work on really exciting projects, but helping brands put the power of expert recommendations to work in their online channels has by far been one of the most rewarding, especially in light of the past year with a tremendous shift to online buying. Part of my enthusiasm stems from the fact that the digital space is just so measurable. For years, we've known there's power in word of mouth, and that the power of some people's recommendations just plain matters more than others. But today, our panel is here to share with you what they are seeing and learning about the impact of expert reviews on consumer behavior in their e-commerce channels. Let's do some quick introductions, and we'll jump right in. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by AJ Allen. He's the brand manager for North America at Crankbrothers. Crankbrothers have been innovators in the bike industry since 1997, a leading producer of pedals, wheels, dropper posts, pumps, tools, and accessories, and they can currently be found at a variety of big box and independent bike specialty retailers, as well as making their products available direct to consumer. JM, he's the director of brand development for Coalatree. Coalatree was established in 2010 on an organic farm in Colorado. They soon grew to produce their own line of eco-friendly workwear, and that has grown their they've grown their brand presence through the use of advocates and crowdfunding campaigns, and they're just beginning to expand their presence into bricks and mortar retailer locations. I'm also joined by Chris Daly, the founder of Smart CRO. He has 11 years of experience in the digital marketing space, with the last 9 specializing in CRO, which is conversion rate optimization. And nothing makes him happier than helping the business understand what users want on their website. We'll hear more from each of our guests shortly, but first I'd like to introduce Matt Ford, our VP of New Business, to help set the stage for our discussion today. Matt?
Thanks, Becky. I'll keep this brief so we can hear from JM and AJ talk about outcomes they're seeing from what we describe as harnessing advocacy. And when we talk about advocacy, we're referring to what happens when people speak on behalf of a brand or a brand's products. And for consumers seeking advice on what to buy, advocacy equals recommendations. We know credible advice helps consumers make better buying decisions. And if you think about the last considered purchase you made, whether it was a new set of wheels or pedals for your mountain bike, or that perfect pair of stretchy waterproof pants for climbing in Moab, that purchase decision was likely influenced by a recommendation in some form. It could have been advice from a knowledgeable friend and family member, counsel from a retail associate, a recommendation from an industry professional, or a digital review that said exactly what you needed to hear. So the challenge for many brands is, how do you create advocacy that is both predictable and authentic? And there are 2 common strategies we hear a lot from brands. And one is hope, which isn't really a strategy, but you put it out there and you see what you get, and the outcomes will be authentic, but it's not very predictable. And on the other end of the spectrum is a buy strategy. So you can pay for reviews and you will get them, but not often are they very authentic. And in many cases, reviews will be labeled with and received a free product or some incentive of some kind. So you want reviews of your products to be authentic and predictable, which is the problem we aim to solve at ExpertVoice. So next slide. Over the last 16 years, ExpertVoice has built a platform and tools to help brands harness advocacy. That means we get other people talking about your brand and products where it drives your business, in retail stores, in ambassador programs, on e-commerce sites and reviews, and on social media. And to do that, we focus on community, strength, and reach. We help you build a community of people who are most influential with your customers, not people you have to pay to post or say nice things about you, but the people who will naturally be your most trusted, passionate advocates. Our network of over 1 million of these people, verified, knowledgeable retail sales associates and industry professionals in categories like pet, sporting goods, outdoors, hunt, fish, health and nutrition, and consumer electronics. Then we help you make what they say more likely to move your customers to action by making them stronger, more frequent recommenders of your products. For them, the expert, Expert Voice is a highly rated app that serves brand lessons, sells their favorite products at a discount, and captures product reviews and user-generated content. And finally, we extend the reach of what they say, elevating their best advice and content and putting it to work where it matters most to you and your customers. So to make this a little more tangible, on this next slide, on the left, this is an expert profile for Tyler Patrick, and he's a biking expert on the platform. And it includes information about his profession, his organizational affiliations, brands he knows well, detailed recommendations he's written, and a lot more, giving you a sense for why things he might say about bike products matter a lot more than some occasional weekender might say. And in the middle, this is an example of the type of in-depth content a person like him engages with on Expert Voice to understand what makes a brand or product unique, who it's right for, what makes it worthy to recommend. And on the far right, this is an example of an expert review created by Tyler, included imagery, a lot of detail, a thumbnail of his profile, and it's being fed into Crankbrothers' product display page to help consumers make more confident buying decisions, raising conversion rates, increasing average order values, and reducing returns. So this model works across all channels where advocacy is important: retail, online, in the field, and soon to come on social. And like Becky said, today we're excited to hear the details from AJ and JM on the impact advocacy makes in your e-commerce channels. So I'll turn it back over to Becky so we can get into the good stuff. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. I'm going to turn to our panel now. As we do that, we're going to keep it pretty informal, more of a fireside chat, if you will, more of a conversation and a few slides just here and there as needed. So that's my way of saying don't panic if you're not seeing something on your screen. As you heard in our overview, Expert Voice works with a variety of brands at different stages in their life cycles, each one with different goals and strategies for how to increase advocacy for their brand. I thought it might be helpful to just start out with a quick background of what brought each of our partners to Expert Voice today. So JM, I'll start with you. Could you tell us what brought Coalatree to Expert Voice and how you structured your program to support your goals?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Becky. So our founder and current CEO, Charlie, prior to founding Coalatree, used to work at Skullcandy and created Skullcandy TV. And there, I think, is the first time that he really saw the power of advocate marketing. And I think we've kind of all seen that, how well that's worked for that brand. So fast forwarding to 2016, 2017, we were launching some of our first products through the Kickstarter platform and doing crowdfunding campaigns. And one of our big goals was to really figure out a way that we could reach our people and grow brand advocacy, which kind of in 2018 ultimately led us to Expert Voice. We saw it as a great way to connect with these folks. So initially, when we first got on the platform, really our focus was to concentrate on the pro audience, as we thought the lifestyle component of the brand would really resonate well, with those folks, and that they could help kind of engage and tell this story of the brand to others. And now, as we're moving forward, we're also really seeing that the retail audience is also really valuable for us as well, particularly the data that it's fed into the Expert Voice feed has allowed us to, bring meaningful metrics to potential retailers and support sell-in at the retail level. Again, going onto the platform, it was really important for us to tell kind of our origin and brand story, which is why we, launched our store with content surrounding the Trailhead pants, which to this day continue to be, one of our best-selling products. And then kind of finally, to cap it all off, the added bonus of having Expert Voice as an additional sales channel is really positive and impactful as well. So that's kind of why we were on the platform and continue to really enjoy being on it.
Thanks, Dan. And we're excited to watch your journey as you stretch your wings into new spaces. AJ, Crankbrothers has been a partner for over 10 years. I know from chatting with you previously that you kind of stepped into the Expert Voice relationship after it started, but can you set us the stage for us about kind of how that's evolved over time?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've been at Crankbrothers for, I think about 8 years now. And as you said, managing ExpertVoice kind of just fell into my lap originally. It was someone else's responsibility, and I took it for them. And I think at first, we really just viewed it as a pro deal or as a industry discount alternative. So basically, essentially just another sales channel for us. But recently, we've begun to discover the full potential of ExpertVoice and essentially all the benefits of being on the platform. And for us, I guess the most important thing is that we've been able to create basically a push-pull effect by using educational content to target two groups of people. So that first group would be, those consumers who are most likely to make those trailside recommendations to their friends, but also the retail professionals who are so critical to converting at the register. So that's really been our overall philosophy with ExpertVoice.
Awesome. Today, you both have kind of started. Let's talk about word of mouth conversations, how to support your retail channels, and now how we're going to support your e-commerce channels, which is what we're here to talk about today. For those of you on the call who might not be familiar when I talk about what an e-commerce solution might look like, in very short form, the experts leave detailed recommendations inside the ExpertVoice platform. Brands have the ability through what we call the advocacy platform to go through and curate and select the recommendations they think would be most meaningful to display to their consumers, and then they can syndicate them directly to their own e-commerce channel on their own website, and soon to come, the ability to syndicate them further through maybe third-party channels like Bazaar Voice. So that's what we mean when we say the e-commerce advocacy solution. Experts creating meaningful reviews, brands selecting and curating the most meaningful and sending them to their e-commerce site to display to real-life consumers. AJ, this ability didn't exist when you guys first started with ExpertVoice. We rolled it out as beta just a couple years ago, but you were quick to raise your hand and say, I'll beta test this product. And I'm curious if you can tell me or help share with the rest of the team here, what made that so appealing to you, what you saw in expert reviews that made them valuable to you, and how you've gone about managing and curating them.
Sure. Yeah, well, as a multi-channel brand that sells through multiple different platforms, we sell through brick and mortar retail shops, mom and pop bicycle shops, and then we sell through, the Walmarts of the world. So it was very difficult for me, as we started to develop more of a strategy to bolster our direct sales presence through our website, so through crankbrothers.com. It was very difficult for me to understand the best way to either syndicate reviews or to ultimately build trust with the consumer, because we really didn't have that many reviews built up. So I think for us, there's a couple of things. Like, we could have used any variety of apps on our Shopify website that would syndicate reviews from other platforms, but ultimately we didn't really want to do that, because what we noticed is that so many of the reviews that you find on Amazon or on Walmart or other retailers, they lack the content that's really useful and educational for the customer. And also there's not that authentic element to a lot of those reviews. So we were looking for a better alternative to that. And I think what ExpertVoice has done with the advocacy program is exactly what we needed. That's kind of the what really drew us to the program.
And when you went about and started to actually select and curate the reviews, how did you decide where to begin?
Yeah, it was, I actually just took about an hour of my day, and getting off the ground and up and running was basically just going through the back catalog of the reviews that we had actually collected over the past few years on ExpertVoice. And it was, at the time, I just went through on chronological order, by our top selling product, taking a look at the reviews. And, if I needed to come back to a review to maybe give it a little bit more time to review it, it's very easy to flag those reviews. And then if I saw something that I knew was a no-brainer to post up on our website or to syndicate, just as easy as clicking a button on that review. So the back end of it is super simple to use. And now these days, ever since I got that original, let's say baseline of the amount of reviews up on our site. Now I'm just able to spend, maybe 5 minutes max per week, just checking to see the new reviews that came in, see if there's anything worth syndicating on there. And most of the time, yeah, there's 4 or 5 up to 10 reviews that are coming in per week that are solid reviews that I know are going to make a difference.
And I know that as someone in the bike industry, you're a little bit selective about the types of people that you want recommending your product or that you think would establish trust with a consumer. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I think our consumer is a core mountain biker, so it's a little bit cultish in a certain way. So I think for us, almost as equally important as the content of the review is who the review is coming from. So we want to make sure that the reviews that we're posting are being written by people who have a lot of experience and who can talk, with authority on the product that they're reviewing. So that's pretty important to us. So usually, what that looks like is people who are involved in the mountain bike space or who really sound like they know what they're talking about. And I love the fact that ExpertVoice gives us the opportunity to kind of be a little bit picky about which reviews we want to be on there. Now, I will say, like, we're not looking for every 10-star review. Like, we find that it works best when you present a balance. So if you start to only post reviews that are perfect and there's no criticism in those reviews, it starts to come off a little bit inauthentic. So for us, it's important to have a balance of, okay, you have a 10-star review here, you might have a couple of 7s, and then even sometimes it's helpful to even include a negative review because it gives you an opportunity to reply to that review and maybe inform the customer and the people who are reading that review about something that might help them along the way with the journey on that product. So yeah, we try to strike a balance and are pretty selective, I guess, about the reviews that we post.
Super. And JM, you guys have roots as a D2C brand, so I have to imagine that reviews were a huge part of your strategy launching your products. What did you guys see in expert reviews that made you want to add them to? You guys had a robust collection of consumer reviews. In fact, last I checked, your Trailhead Pants have like 1,800 consumer reviews. So what's your strategy and approach to your expert reviews?
Yeah, I think similarly to what AJ alluded to, we're really looking for reviews with substance that are meaningful and provide something of value to a potential consumer that's wanting to, or customer of ours that's wanting to buy our product. And I think, the syndication of the expert reviews onto our site allows us to do exactly that. As you said, we have thousands and thousands of reviews across the various products that we sell, whether that be Trailhead Pants, Kachula blankets, Evolution hoodies. But, they come in traditional review form in the sense that they're through an app that doesn't allow the customer to see a photo, doesn't allow the customer to actually potentially go in and look at a profile of who's leaving the review. And so what it really comes down to is kind of the anatomy of that expert review and how much substance is within it. And that's what really makes it super valuable for us. Not only are these folks getting out there using the products as they were intended to be used, but then oftentimes it's not unusual for folks to come in, leave a very detailed description of exactly what they liked about the product, how one particular feature of the product worked. And really that substance provides a lot of value for customers shopping the site.
Awesome. And I know that when we were chatting earlier, we were talking about it's amazing the experts go to that length and that level purely of their own accord. That it's a voluntary action.
Yeah, I think the branding of ExpertVoice is spot on in that, people on there are experts. They want to really dive in, learn about the products, and be seen as a, again, as AJ said, they want to be able to speak with authority on the products that they use. And that's really what we see, kind of within the reviews. which is not necessarily always what we see on a traditional review that might come through to the site. Or at least ones that come through to the site, it's very difficult for us sometimes to validate what's this person all about. You know what I'm saying? Let's see a picture of them. Let's see, kind of their interests, what they're into, etc.
Awesome. I'm going to turn to Chris now. So Chris, you're not an employee of ExpertVoice. Coalatree actually introduced you to us just after you completed doing some testing on the impact of expert reviews on their site. So I'd love for you to just kind of back up to that first time you learned Coalatree had added the ExpertVoice, we call it the display, to their site, taking up valuable real estate on their e-commerce site, and what you were thinking and how you reacted as an expert in the CRO space.
Yeah, so my job as a conversion rate optimization guy is to make sure that everything that my clients have on their site is actually contributing to conversion rates. So I feel pretty weary anytime my clients will add something to their site. So, with Coalatree, it was like, hey, we're trying out, we added this expert review thing to the site. My first impression, to be honest, was, what the hell is this? Like, you guys already have customer reviews on the site. Like, what do you need more reviews for? That was my first go-to. But of course, as a testing minded guy, it was like, well, you know what, let's run a test. Let's see what happens if we remove it. Let's find out, let's get some data as to whether or not this is actually helping. So we did, we went in and our first test was just removing ExpertVoice to get a baseline of whether or not it was helping. So when we removed ExpertVoice, revenue dropped by 7%. And as soon as we saw that, it like a light bulb kind of went on for JM and myself. It was like, all right, we've got something here. Like, this is definitely a conversion lever on the site, right? Those expert reviews are helping people convert. And so, just as part of my standard process, it's like, well, if we have something on the site that's working, let's find out where people want to see this. If we're going to have expert reviews on our page, is it best to have them right above the reviews, or should we have them somewhere else on the page? So our next test was moving them higher on the product page to see what happens if we move them all the way up to the top. And when all was said and done, having ExpertVoice on the site and having the expert reviews all the way up at the top ended up having about a 26% increase in revenue. And there's not that many things, to be honest, on most e-commerce sites, there's not that many things that can sway conversion rates by 26%. And so when I saw that, it was very obvious to me. These expert reviews are extremely impactful. It's not just like it's nice content to have. This is content that's actually getting people to purchase that wouldn't normally purchase, right? So for whatever reason, this is people that are interested in the product but haven't quite found the motivation to purchase. These expert reviews are pushing them over the edge to actually make that first purchase decision. And so that's kind of when I told JM and when we reviewed those results together, I was like, we should share this with ExpertVoice. I think this would be good for them to have some of this data. And that's kind of what led to some of our early conversations. But again, it was all led initially by some skepticism on my end of whether or not this was going to help. And it was nice to get the data proving that, like, not only is ExpertVoice cool, but it's extremely impactful from a conversion standpoint.
Well, I'll take the kudos that were cool too, though. So thanks for that, Chris. JM, I just have to ask, like, would you have been willing to put expert reviews at the top of your page without Chris's input?
Knowing what we know now, yeah, absolutely, most definitely. I think, as Chris said, it's very valuable real estate, and putting anything in that spot, you're always slightly apprehensive about it. But if the question was posed, would we have been willing to just port the expert voice reviews over to our site without testing? Knowing what we know about ExpertVoice and how in-depth folks on there are when it comes to leaving reviews, I would say yeah. Now, was I very pleasantly surprised by the drastic positive impact that the reviews had on the site? Absolutely. So.
Awesome. So once you made that kind introduction to us, to Chris, and it's great to have a third party helping us with this, we engaged Chris to do some more testing with us, and Crankbrothers was one of the brands. When we engaged you to work with Crankbrothers, Chris, did you go in with any hypothesis about what you might see? And then, of course, we look forward to you sharing the learnings.
Yeah, so I mean, after the experience with Coalatree, my suspicion and my hypothesis was, okay, this is probably going to be impactful for most brands. Once I learned more about the platform and the reviews that you guys have in there, I could see the value for the customer, right? Kind of like both AJ and JM were sharing. These reviews are they tend to be more in depth than your average customer review. And I forgot to mention this, but as a side note, with Coalatree, after we tested the expert reviews, we thought, you know what, let's test our normal reviews. I wonder if our normal reviews are impacting conversion rates that much. So we tested moving the normal reviews up higher on the page and removing them. And the normal reviews actually had no impact at all on conversion rates. And so just to drive that Coalatree point home, not only were the expert reviews helpful, they were the only helpful reviews in terms of getting people to convert. So when it came to Crankbrothers and running the test with Crankbrothers, I kind of figured that we would see something similar, although as an A/B testing guy, in my mind, I always think just because it worked for one brand doesn't mean it's going to work for another brand. So I was really curious to see how things would play out with a few other brands. So with Crankbrothers, we took as wide of an approach as we possibly could. Or in other words, I wanted to know, are expert reviews helpful? So we tested removing them. And then I also wanted to know, if they are helpful, let's test as many different locations on the product page as possible. Because there's all kinds of reasons why expert reviews would work in different positions. Having them at the top can be helpful if the expert reviews, if the customer is already almost willing to buy the product, and then the expert review is the first thing they see, then the expert review can push them over the edge. But maybe they want more information first, and so it's helpful to have it farther down under some of the content that we have on product pages. And then our final thought was, well, if we're going to have it at the top of the page, and this is just always in my mind as an A/B tester, I'm like, if I'm going to put it at the top, I need to test it at the bottom as well, because I'm always curious to know, is there a linear relationship between, like, is it better to have it higher or lower on the page and so forth? So we tried to test it in as many spots as possible, including removing it. And so those were kind of the approaches going into this test. I don't know if there's anything else you want me to say on the setup with that.
No, that's great.
So as we tested, and just as a background for this, when we were testing these, we were using Google Optimize, and we were splitting traffic between all of our test variations. So we would, there was a percentage of traffic that was going to the current site with expert reviews where they normally were. And then we also had a percentage of traffic going to each one of those variations. So all of those ran at the exact same time with the same traffic, and a percentage of the audience saw each one. So that's, if anyone's curious about the methodology on those A/B tests, they were all running simultaneously. And once again, we saw a fairly significant impact, and it was quite interesting. I mean, AJ can probably share some of his, surprise at what the results were that we saw. But so first of all, we saw an 18% increase in conversion rates by placing the expert reviews in a different position on the page. We also saw a really significant increase in average order value. Or in other words, not only were we converting more people, but the people we were converting were buying either more expensive products or a higher quantity of products. So this was, the expert reviews were significantly influencing the purchase behavior. But what we saw on Crankbrothers was fairly different than Coalatree. We saw that either placing the expert reviews at the very top of the page or the very bottom of the page saw a similar increase in conversion rate. So what was fascinating to me about that is, like I said earlier, I usually expect to see a linear relationship. Like, if it's helpful to have it at the top, then theoretically it should be not helpful at the bottom, right? If seeing it first on the page is good, then seeing it at the bottom of the page should be harmful. But we actually saw the opposite, so having it all the way at the bottom of the page below the normal customer reviews was really impactful. And so, to us, what came out of this was the learning that expert reviews are really impactful if it's either the first or last thing that they see, right? If it's the first thing they see, then it can spark, it's kind of the hook that gets them to, either read all the rest of the content or buy the product. And if it's the last thing they see, then that means that they've already gone through all the other content on the page and they're interested, but still not yet convinced. And so having it at the last part of the page is like the closer, it's like the thing that pushes them over that edge at the end. But once again, we saw a different impact with Crankbrothers, and Becky, you can also kind of verify every time we've run this test for clients, we see a different result. And what that tells me is each brand is unique. Like each company, each client of ExpertVoice that uses this widget on the site has a unique audience that has unique interests, that needs different amounts of content before they're ready to see the expert reviews. And so, I think that's always good to hear as a brand, like that our audiences are unique and they need their own unique approach in order to convert. And so again, it's you never just want to assume that because something worked for one company that it's going to work for you. It's always helpful to take this approach of testing and optimizing the placement for your audience.
Absolutely. And for the record, I don't think I'll ever get tired of hearing your results and analysis. AJ, we had the luxury of talking to you last year, almost about this exact same time when you've been using reviews for about a year. And you told us that you had a suspicion that they were impacting your revenue by about 30%. So I have to ask, were you surprised when you saw some of the data to back it up?
Yeah, it's funny because when I said that, I don't think I had anticipated that a lot of that additional revenue was going to come from basically an increased AOV. I really thought most of the revenue was going to come from higher conversion rate, which obviously was a component of that. But I think what those results show, like with that huge lift in AOV, is that not only, as Chris said, can placement vary from brand to brand, but almost these reviews can have a different impact from product to product. So for us who have like a pretty varied catalog, even in terms of price points, when we sell multi-tools for $20 and we also sell $3,000 carbon fiber wheel sets, those reviews can have such a different impact. And I think that's why one of the reasons why we saw how, depending on the placement, you can get good results on either placement. I think it really just depends on the product that customer is viewing. So I guess, yeah, in the moment when I did hear the results, I was absolutely surprised. But in hindsight, it actually makes quite a bit of sense. So that was kind of my initial reaction. Yeah.
Super. And for those of you on the line, we're going to get to questions in just a few minutes. So if you have them, go ahead and throw them in the chat. We do have a few from the registration process as well. But AJ, now that you have this information in your back pocket, you've got lots of years of experience working and evolving your ExpertVoice program. How are you thinking about how this might inform your strategy going forward?
Yeah, well, for us, I'll use the example of those carbon fiber wheel sets again. So we have a relatively new product called the Synthesis carbon fiber wheel sets. It's the product for mountain bikes, and it's oftentimes the cost of these wheel sets can actually be over 50% of the value of a rider's entire bike. Here is this $3,000 wheel set. Most people's full suspension mountain bikes usually cost around, let's say, $4,000 to $5,000 for our average consumer. So obviously, it's not something that you really want to take a gamble on unless you know that the product is going to work for you, and if you know that the product is going to improve your experience. So when we launched that product, keep in mind we're newcomers to this specific product category. So the market's already pretty saturated with other manufacturers who are producing good product in this space. And so for us, it was really hard to really make an impact when we first launched, and our sales were a little bit slower than we would have hoped, based on how good we knew that the product performed. So then, as this advocacy program came out, it kind of gave us the perfect opportunity to start building a base of reviews on that specific product. And what we noticed right away is as these reviews were rolling in, and as we were getting so many positive reviews and being able to syndicate that on our e-commerce platform, then we noticed the momentum picking up for that specific product. So, anecdotally, I knew that there had to be a huge impact, and it's nice to see the data behind that. But what that also tells me is that moving forward, any big product launch that we'll do in the future, we'll heavily consider launching the product ahead of the public launch on ExpertVoice. So basically doing a pre-launch to ExpertVoice users in hopes to generate reviews that we can have live on our website at the time of launch. So that's kind of become kind of a new strategy for us as we've gone through this experience with the advocacy program.
Well, stay tuned, more products to come in that front. And JM, I know that expert reviews have definitely solidified their place in your e-commerce experience, but has your learnings over the past year impacted how you're thinking about go-to-market processes, or just how you approach and manage your ExpertVoice program as a whole?
I think it's just really made our, the value of the relationship with ExpertVoice that much greater, and just reinforces, how positive a relationship this is for our brand. Going back to kind of the beginning of the webinar where we were talking about, our goals of being on ExpertVoice, being on the platform, it's really to increase brand advocacy. And this process of syndicating reviews really allows us to create this unique bond with brand advocates, in the sense that we're able to communicate with them, in the actual review syndication process, respond to them on both the positives. Hey, thank you so much for leaving such an amazing review on our Trailhead pants, as well as maybe some things that need work, and give us really incredible data. As you'll kind of see in this review that's being scrolled past, I think one of the things when talking about reviews, people always love to focus on, oh, we're getting so many 5-star reviews, or oh, we're getting so many 10 out of 10s, and this is phenomenal. But for us, really those lackluster, what most brands would consider reviews, are just as valuable, because what we're able to do is, in this example, educate the consumer, the expert, on why perhaps the product isn't performing the way that they would like it. So instead of having a customer come in, leave a review saying, I don't like these pants, they piled immediately, and they weren't what I expected, then we have the opportunity to go back in and say, hey, this is the reason why this is happening, and kind of educate the consumer to, again, help increase their advocacy for our brand, and understand why this is happening. So both on the side of getting really positive, informed reviews, as well as getting really kind of meaningful reviews that have qualms that that entail qualms that the consumer may have. Both in both cases, we're getting a lot of value out of this program.
Awesome. And you do a tremendous job of engaging with your experts. And we all know as consumers, we like to be heard. So kudos to you. Well, that comes to the end of kind of our formal fireside chat today. I don't see any questions in the chat, but I do have a few I can prompt up for you. Just quick looking forward from our side, we already have over 70 brands that are leveraging their expert reviews in their e-commerce sites, and 100 more working on their implementation right now. We have stats on, we know that those expert reviews are being viewed by over 130,000 consumers each week. And as we look to the future, we're really excited to be able to offer optimization as an add-on service for people who do invest in the e-commerce advocacy solution, building the syndication with third-party networks, so ExpertVoice and then others, and then continue to improve the product. We get more feedback from brands and consumers in a forum like this that's super, super helpful. So we'll do our best to keep you on time to get you out of here in the 45-minute time allotment. But I know that a few of the questions that came in earlier was, let's see here. One asked, how do you expand your reach to engage people who are willing to read your reviews? I have a couple of thoughts, but I thought I'd ask JM, AJ, that's kind of on the spot. So if you have anything you want to add, I'm open ears. I know that from some of our brands that have been using the solution for a while, you know, they're counting on just driving traffic to their website. And some brands have actually taken the reviews and used them as a strategy for paid media, for paid advertising. So they're actually just featuring the expert, the review. And one brand told us that it's been some of their highest performing advertising that they've done because it's authentic and it's drawing the consumer in. So we're continuing to explore ways to help brands drive more traffic to their site as well.
Yeah, and I can maybe expand a little bit on that as well. I think for us, you know, yet another channel of sales that we have at Crankbrothers is OEM sales. So, you know, when it comes to the bike industry, OEM is basically, you know, I supply a brand like, let's just say Trek, for example. I supply a bike brand like Trek with my part for them to use on a complete bicycle. So, you know, for us, you know, I think there's so much more potential for us to use ExpertVoice reviews who are, you know, written by authentic users of the product who know what they're talking about. And we can leverage that, you know, saying like, look, these are what real people think about our product. This is why you should choose our components to be on your bikes. So that, I think that's a way that we've been able to utilize the reviews in the past that might not be a traditional method.
And kind of similarly on our end, as I was saying in the beginning, you know, folks, especially on the retail side, know what ExpertVoice is and know the types of folks that are on there. And so being able to bring to the table, you know, 10 out of 10 reviews where people are enthralled with the product that you're trying to get into those retail locations is really meaningful, you know, beyond just say reviews that you would be kind of pulling off your website.
Thanks. And I have a couple of follow-up questions. One is, how do the brands initiate the review and get the product in the hands of the expert reviewers? And do those reviewers submit the review in the app themselves? So just operations of how ExpertVoice works. Yeah, the brand doesn't initiate the review. The ExpertVoice platform will prompt the expert for a review after they purchase from the platform. So they get a reminder, they get some notifications inside the network, but it's up to the expert to actually go and leave the review. And as far as how they actually get the product in the hands, it's really up to the brand. They can choose to host what we call host a store on our site, or they can redirect the expert to their own site with a special discount code or a closed network. And they choose what kind of access the expert gets. You know, they can choose to require them to actually engage in content and take a lesson and pass what we call the edu games. They can make as much or as little content as they like. Some are actually purely just providing a product at whatever level of discount that is meaningful to their audience. And then do the reviewers submit the review in the app themselves? Yes. So they have access, they can access ExpertVoice via the website on a desktop or laptop and via an app that's available on their mobile phone, and they can engage either way.
One thing that I might just add to, Becky, is, you know, a lot of times I think when we hear like getting a notification or you're prompted to do something, it comes as more bothersome than maybe helpful. I think that that's really not the case with ExpertVoice, being that these folks are so excited to, again, speak with authority on the products that they're using. And so when these folks are prompted to leave a review, I personally believe that a lot of them are excited to do so, as opposed to, again, your traditional consumer that maybe sees it as more bothersome, or, you know, I don't have time to do this, so I'm just going to push it to the side.
Thanks, Jam. Well, we are right at coming up the top of our 45 minutes, so I'm going to wrap us up. If you have other questions, you know how to find us at expertvoice.com. We will be sending the recording as a follow-up with some other information and materials, and we look forward to any other questions or thoughts you might have. Special thank you to Jam, AJ, and Chris for joining us today, and wish you all a great rest of your day.